Rothstein, correct, not Roston.
Steam.
I'll forget that in 2 minutes. I'm still thinking about out the road.
It'll come to you when you're walking.
Oh, I know who that is. It's Wayne Walker. Jim, Daryl, you guys ready? Ready? Lee? Taneytown Planning Commission, please come to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. Would you please stand to the pledge of the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the records reflect the members that are here this evening. Chris Miller was unable to make it this evening, so he's not here. Commissioner members should have received the draft minutes of August the 29th, 2022. Is there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, I'll hear a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bill. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Disapproved likewise? Carried. Thank you. Delegations and action items. Recovery 180. Daryl, you want to start us off on that?
Sure. So the building down there is in the general business district. It was a home. It's a change of use. Their goal is to put in a counseling center there. So of course, with any change of use, it triggers a site plan. And we're going to hear from these gentlemen how much that is and what you guys want to do as far as that site plan.
Okay, so is there a representative would like to come?
So gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, it's hard to hear from the people in the back.
Sure.
But also please sign in.
Good evening. So the property at 168 was a residence we purchased. We'll be looking to turn into a counseling center. So it's an outpatient counseling center. We're not doing any major changes to the building, just some paint and aesthetic things. So we were looking for the waiver of the site plan this evening so that we can move forward with the change of use for that location from residential to a business.
Okay, and that's permitted in that zone, right?
It is.
Okay, okay. Are you going to do anything with signage?
With signage?
The sign. You going to put a sign in front of the property?
Signage.
Signage.
Yeah. Typically, we don't. We're not opposed to it, but we typically don't advertise it.
Okay,
More so for the clients and their privacy.
okay. And the reason I bring that up, because if you don't, then you'd have to come before us again.
If we don't, okay.
Right, if,
Understood.
okay.
With the business, how much traffic do you normally get in there? Is there, people in and out all day long? Or?
It's 9 to 5 are the hours for the day, and then there is an evening group that will run usually around 7 to 8 o'clock. There's no traffic in that building after 9 p.m.
So there's a group, you have enough parking and everything?
Yes, so if there are not enough spots, we will provide transportation to and from to limit the amount of cars that are there. That is correct.
So how many employees will be at the site?
On site, during the day, probably 3 at most, usually 2. And then in the late evening, 2. It'll be a credentialed therapist, a licensed counselor, and some sort of office assistant.
Typically, everything's scheduled.
That's correct. So there's a morning group, usually runs around 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. There's individual psychotherapy where they'll come and meet with their counselor. And then there is an evening group for those that work during the day who can't come to group during the day. So come at night.
Any other questions? Daryl, any restrictions there whatsoever as far as parking since it's general business?
Well, I think we need to hear more information about how many clients you're going to see a day.
Sure.
These groups.
Yeah.
I think when we spoke, wasn't this facility in large part support for the building beside it?
That is correct. This is the clinical space, correct.
For that?
They could be people coming from other places,
Okay.
not necessarily just that, but yes, to your point, the majority of the ones residing in the other property will make use of that as their clinical space, as their recovery space.
Okay.
That is correct.
And any requirements for ADA parking?
Well, that would be a county decision. So
Okay.
with this site plan, you're still going to have to go through, the review process with the county.
Understood.
Okay, any other questions?
Are you gonna, will there be any living accommodations there still, or is that gonna be all gone?
No, it will be all residential. There will be nobody staying in that building. That's correct.
Okay, entertain a motion.
One more question. And sir, you don't have to put a sign there. Okay. You can do a window cling if you like. I don't think a sign is necessary.
Okay.
If you don't want one.
Understood. I appreciate it.
Okay. So to get this on the floor, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to grant the site plan waiver to Recovery 180.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Brad. Okay. Any comments from the floor? Okay, all those in favor of,
We got a comment, sir.
sorry, I didn't see some.
Chris Tillman, Georgia on York, and Taneytown Chamber of Commerce. Just trying to understand completely exactly what's going on here. If this is a facility where there are going to be a number of people parked there, there doesn't seem to have been any concern about how many parking spaces they're providing, whether any of those are ADA compliant spaces, and I understand that that's a county issue regarding their permits and occupancy. But if the county requires them to have ADA compliant parking, they're gonna have to come back before this body for a site plan, are they not? You grant them a waiver today, and, you know, they can come back and do anything that they want. It seems a little uninformed.
I don't think they would have to come back to us, as long as they meet the county's requirements, right?
So what we're most likely looking at is a change of use for the building from residential to that of a counseling center. If the county requires dedicated handicap parking, and that I doubt that would throw them over any of the thresholds that would trigger, that would not allow them to benefit from the waiver. You know, they're likely not going to go over 5,000 square feet or do anything that requires stormwater management. But that may be required, you know, as part of the change of use. You know, I expect while the home is probably, it sounds like it's very open and low to the ground, you know, there may be some ADA related things that, you know, we haven't been in the building. So that'll be up to the Carroll County folks who do the permits and inspections. But if anything were required that would throw them over that threshold, they would have to come back again. But that's not anticipated based on there's no work to the exterior of the building being proposed. You know, if it does turn out that there needs to be a ramp, that'll go back for a building permit and a zoning certificate.
So basically, the footprint's not changing unless the county requires something.
Right.
Okay, if that answers your question.
Sort of, without actually seeing any kind of drawing or anything, there was no way to know that. So this is all, are there two buildings on that site?
No, this is a standalone.
This is sta-
It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 168. That's the driveway there.
the other. Ah, that's not the house I was thinking of. Okay. So, all right, I am concerned that they don't have, you know, that everything isn't laid out. I mean, when I came before this body for our things at George's on York, you know, we had a drawn-out site plan and requested a waiver, and, you know, we actually ended up having to go through a full site plan process. So, you know, if you don't, it just seems like there's not an awful lot of information being considered here before you just grant a blanket waiver. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your input. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Mr. Rushton? Yes. Was, when you'd mentioned provide shuttle service, like might people park across the street at the
No,
public?
so if they are using the other property that Mr. Hale was mentioning, they have limited parking there, but they are instructed that if they cannot park there, that they would need to call us for transportation.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the request for a site plan waiver signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, likewise. Phil, I didn't catch you. Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, thank you, folks.
Take care. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Next item on the agenda, affordable self-storage, request for landscape site plan change. Darrell, you want to, is that what we have here in front of us?
So it's this packet here.
Yes, gotcha.
So affordable self-storage at 465 East Baltimore Street. It's located behind the Verizon store. And when that site plan was developed in 96, there was a requirement for buffering between what was then a restaurant, what is now Verizon, a fence, and then on the left-hand side of it, looking, walking away from East Baltimore Street, there's a hedgerow there. There's a row of plantings there that were also supposed to be there forever and to be an effective barrier. So I had made inquiries into what the uncut vegetation was between the Verizon store and the storage last year. And in calling the owner of the property, he had the people that are leasing the storage facility trim. Well, they trimmed pretty well. In fact, they over-trimmed. So there was a conversation had with the homeowner. There's a picture in there of a fence that you can see through quite clearly, that there's no buffering happening for the vegetations there now. So I contacted John Bauman down at the county, and these the first 3 pages, first 2 pages are, and you'll see on the left-hand side, I highlighted it. Those plantings are supposed to be there forever. One dies, you put it back. Pretty common. But this is how amazing it is. This goes back, like I say, 96. So John Bauman said we can do a couple things. We can, you can make the decision to have them put it back, replant some things to make buffering for now. In calling the person who leases the facility last week, when he got back to me, he's agreed that what you see on that second page, he's going to, between the Verizon store and the storage, he's going to put all that back the way it was supposed to be, with the cypresses and that other monster, verbinium something. He's going to put that all back to original. And that'd be nice because it looks really bad right now. So that'd be cleaned up. So again, it's your call, put it back all original or use some creativity and flexibility. They're going to put back what is important, what you can see from East Baltimore Street, And then the owner of the property beside it, one of the suggestions that John is throwing out is putting in the slats in the fence. That gentleman thinks that's great. It's immediate growth, it's immediate cover rather, and the owner and the person who's leasing the facilities is willing to do that. So you all can make that change, and the county's fine with that. So I got emails from both the person who's leasing it, that I included in your package, that he's going to put back what was original. Okay, did you guys see that? It's the last page of this stapled document. And the page before that is the gentleman who owns the property with the fence, and he's fine with the slats.
Okay. Now, our ordinance, we go by the county as far as the buffering and stuff. Is that correct?
Right, so the city has adopted Carroll County's landscape ordinance, but also in our site development plan chapter, it states that any changes from the site plan after it's approved are supposed to come back to this body. So if they're going to do something other than replace what was shown on the site plan, it should have your approval. So doing the slats instead of requiring them to replant all the trees that were limbed up so much is what is changing the site plan.
Okay, gotcha. So actually, we're discussing two different things. The planting plus the slats in the fence, right?
Correct, right. And the reason it's coming back to you is because they're proposing the slats in the fence rather than planting all new trees along the side that's closest to the glass property.
Okay.
So putting the slats in rather than a vegetative screen is the change to the site plan.
So parallel to Route 40, we're looking at putting plants back there. Yes. And then perpendicular would be slats in the fence.
Yes.
Just on the one side, right? Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Somewhere, wherever it's going.
And was there also an option for plants that was to the original with the cypress and the V plant, or creativity?
In this case, I was pleased that the person who's leasing that facility is willing to put back what was there. And that's gonna be a lot of work, because those, the cypresses that were cut down were about the same size of what is existing right now. And I don't, it's been a while, I really don't, it's not an easy place to look, because you got at 30 miles an hour, you get very little time to look over there, but right now the site it's a blurry picture, the blue picture there. It's just all growth. So when whomever removed what was there, and the owner and the person leasing it didn't remove it, long story short, it's just weeds and little trees, and it's a mess. It's horrible.
For the slats in the fence, is that gonna be like a vinyl? Like what's typical for that?
PVC, yeah, vinyl, yeah.
And the color, it's open to whatever the desire?
I asked the gentleman, do you have a preference? He says he does not, the homeowner, and they're put slats in there.
Is there a general recommendation for color, or 3 for what's?
No, I think, that's the reason I had asked Mr. Glass if he had a preference for color. He says, I really don't care. He just wants the privacy.
All right.
Are we in a position to request neutral or earth tones, so we wouldn't get a fuchsia?
I'd imagine
like
you could
to-
specify, sure.
Yeah, I would like to kind of limit what they,
It is changed to the site plan, so that's where your authority lies. So-
okay. So we can do this, well, let's talk some more about it. And then we can do this either in one motion to cover both, or two separate motions.
From the input via email, it seems like everyone's amenable to what's been put forth. So I personally am liking the idea of the plantings that are parallel to 140, restoring that to the original intent of planting, and then the perpendicular aspect, say yay to the slats with the choice of neutral and/or earth tones.
Okay.
Aesthetically pleasing.
So are you,
No South
can't
Carolina
really ask you-
vibrant row.
Flamingo pink.
yeah, your opinion of mutual may not be the same as mine, but that sounds more agreeable, I think. So are you putting that in the form of a motion?
Is there anybody who wants to push back on any of those aspects before trying to articulate that?
Like fuchsia. That'd be-
I'm sorry.
Well, let's get a motion on, then we can break that down if we needed to. But I
Okay.
like that you're combining it.
Okay. So I move that we approve to restore the planting line parallel to 140 with original plantings, and the portion that is perpendicular to 140 have slats put into the fence in neutral and/or earth tone.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Further discussion?
As like Lee said, everything's pretty well.
Pretty well. Brad,
I'm
good?
good. I'm good with that.
Any comments from the floor? Okay. All those in favor of that motion, and Brad, would you repeat that motion? Did you, or not Brad, Carroll, could you repeat that motion again?
As I say, I thought I'd been called worse, but maybe not. Sorry, Brad. So, Councilman Hand wants the property owner to plant back on the 140 parallel back to the original specifications. And on the perpendicular side, the fence at Mr. Glass's will be slatted with vinyl or whatever they use in a neutral earth tone. Now, I would like to know what that means, really. Are we talking about a tan? Are we talking about
Yeah.
Tan brown.
earth tone is?
Beige, something,
Subtle greens, possibly a
No stripes?
pleasant olive, or beige.
Okay.
I don't think we would want like red, white, and blue,
No,
like was,
Specks of
right.
clay.
It should be
possibly.
consistent, with the same color all the way through.
right.
But not Georgia red clay, because,
Right.
no, we're Maryland.
Agreed?
Yes.
So back again, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Carried. Thank you. Okay. Ordinance and agreement, planning zone. Darrell, your report?
Okay.
You notice I got that right, Darrell?
You did, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm starting to like my name again.
Yeah, thank you. I gotta have a sip.
So, not a whole lot in my report. The rest will be covered as we go down through the agenda. A couple of things on the agenda. You notice that Chairman Parker was nice enough to allow a little change. You have old business, now we have old and new business. Going forward, there's going to be, with the comp plan, with zoning regs, the different things we already have under old business. The new business will differentiate that out. So I'm still working on my presentation to you all as far as how I'm trying to make it so I've sat there before, 20 years ago and go, oh man, where was that at? What this goes with this. Trying to make it so that it's, if you, one of your spouse just shuffles your stuff, just so you sort of find it back so we can, stay in motion. So back to my report, Bo Hunter's den is back in town. He had been here in town and had an indoor archery range. It's something that's rather unusual. The mayor and city council, not this body, are the only ones who can allow a range in town. So they did approve that indoor range, just like he had, Mr. Fitzgerald had one before. He's located down at Dr. Tate's compound. And he's even thinking about next year taking his sugar shack down there as well. So, that was quite a success.
So it's at Dr. Tate's building, not the Agway.
Dr. Tate's building, yeah. Mhm.
So where the building that he's putting it in, 76, what's in there at the moment?
No, I can ride down real quick and find out. So there was a gun place,
Lock, stock, and
Gotcha,
barrel.
okay, I know where we're at.
there other than storage. I don't know that. I don't know what else is in there, Jim.
Okay, well, how long has that place been closed, that particular spot? I mean, it's been operational by something since he moved out?
Well, supposedly the gun guy is the gun shop is still there. I don't know about the hearing. I think it's a hearing aid place. I don't know about that. I didn't, wasn't looking that way.
So it has been vacant? Right,
The space where Shane is, where
Right.
Mr. Fitzgerald is,
yes. I guess what I'm getting around to, it hasn't been vacant for over a year, right?
I don't.
Because doesn't that trigger something else?
Well, so it's a business allowed in that zone, okay? There's very little, actually no renovations other than the gun, than the range. So it'd be sort of like, the low impact would be sort of like, a barber changed from that side of the street down to that side of the street. So it's an open space, lots of commercial parking there. And a lot of his people, a lot of his students are going to be children. It's supposedly it's coming back. Archery's really coming back.
Okay, thanks. Then go ahead with your report. Continue with your report.
Oh, thank you. City Manager Wyprecht and I will meet with Carroll County Planning for the Transportation Master Plan Wednesday. More information down the road on that. And we're up to update on site plans. Are you ready to go into that, sir?
I think so.
Okay. Bollington Park Phase 1, delivered in your package are revised site plans. It's got a good bit more detail of the really difficult stuff, the water items, if you will. There was a huge requirement accomplished in that the MD Wetlands and Waterways permit has been issued. That's good news. That's very difficult. Anytime you're dealing with water, it's huge. You have to really understand what's going on there. So that permit has been issued. The last comment letter that our engineers sent back, it's a chunk. It was in your packet. That should clear up a lot of what's needed there. And I think as that letter goes through the rounds of the different agencies, we'll be ready to put a shovel in the ground sometime soon, hopefully. Yeah, because the money source for a lot of that is time sensitive, so we have to get this right.
I noticed on the plans that for the parking lot, there was only 3 pole lights. Is that correct? Is that, which only reflects out, what was it, 12 or 15 feet?
Yeah, they won't go that far, yeah.
Okay,
Because in the future, so it's also, it closes at dark. No, that park does.
so the lights aren't going to be on at night?
I don't think so, no.
I mean, all night. I mean, 10 o'clock or something, they're going to...
Yeah, they go off.
Just concerned what impact that's going to have on the residents around there.
That's why there's so little lighting.
Yeah.
That was done to minimize the impact on anybody out in that area. So it's very low level. It's just, there will be cameras out there. Also, we're adding cameras to all the parks, as we can afford. We've been buying some every year, every budget. We've been putting money in it under IT. So we do need to have some lighting out there to assist with that also. But the idea was to keep it very minimal since the park is going to be dawn to dusk at this point. We'll have to revisit that if things do move forward with Phase 2 and the potential observatory. That's going to be a lot to talk about then. But for right now, with the park only being open during daylight, that security lighting is very minimal.
That's good.
Anyone else?
May I have, and pardon my ignorance, the Ramble Trail versus the porous pathway? Because I was looking up Ramble Trails and it looked kind of like what I had in my mind as a porous pathway, possibly gravel. So if y'all could educate me. Like,
So
what's the difference?
The porous path is like a poured in place rubber, rather than, so it's something that's ADA compliant. Somebody can, use a rollator or a wheelchair on there. Unlike, a mulch or a gravel trail is going to be much more difficult for a wheeled mode of transportation, other than maybe a mountain bike or something. So the ramble trails are going to be a more organic type of trail, and those will be done just over time once the park is open. They were not part of the bid for the project.
It seemed like, and I could have been misinterpreting the plans, that the Ramble Trail at times would cross over.
Yes.
So is that, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. Okay, we're good.
Good.
In your packet were 4 letters on storage today. There was no action on Bollinger, just
Right.
Was it 4 letters or was it 3 letters and 4 pages?
I believe it was 4 letters.
Under storage today. Yeah. Okay.
I only got 3 letters, that's all.
That's all I got is 3 letters. Packet. Some comments? Okay,
I don't have a comment on the 4th letter because I don't have it.
okay, go ahead, Darrell.
Okay, thank you. So the construction phase projects, you may have noticed that Meadowbrook's sections 5 and 7, we've cleaned it up. It was 3 different Meadowbrooks. 4's been dropped off, so now it's 5, 6, and 7. We're hoping that by the time we meet next month, that section 5 will be off of that, should be off of there. B-Dot Enterprises, the old Havilah building. That place has been permit finalized. We signed off on all that last Thursday. The final was Friday. That business is ready to open. That will be dropping off our agenda as well. And Taneytown Crossing should be off of that. Hopefully we get that Mylar change back soon for your signature. So we'll have those things off the agenda as well. Working on cleaning that up. And other than that, I have nothing else, sir.
Any questions or comments? Okay. Jay had any, did he give you anything? Jay?
He did not.
Okay.
Jim?
Tiffany? Good evening.
He did.
Podium around 8 o'clock rather than 9, like some nights.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple updates this month. For the comprehensive rezoning, the Board of County Commissioners completed their work sessions on the Planning Commission's recommended changes to the Ag and Conservation zoning text and held 2 public hearings on September 22nd, last Thursday. They are scheduled to discuss the proposal again on October 6th. And then the 2022 Carroll County Hazard Mitigation Plan, which Taneytown is part of, the county's Public Safety Department transmitted the draft to the municipalities and the HMP Planning Group, and only Land and Resource Management had any comments, and those have been incorporated into the final plan. And they have now been talking to MDEM, or Maryland Department of Emergency Management, and FEMA to get the plan ready to send to them for review by mid-October. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Okay, any questions?
I'll hang around still. Even though-
Awesome.
But thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving to old business. Discussion on the front yard setbacks and evaluation, or the equations. Daryl, you want to?
So have a couple of you've gotten out to go check things out. I don't know, maybe, it sounds like we'd almost need to, I have a couple people that I could call, we can maybe do field trips to, just call it 30 minutes, we can look at 3 different lawns and understand. So with the yard exceptions, corner lots have 2 houses, two front yards, okay? So there's a little bit of a disadvantage if you have, a corner lot in that you can't do a lot of what your neighbor's doing because you have a corner home. So if the setback from, in the front is 35 feet, it's normally that on the second front yard. In that you cannot have 6-foot fences, you can't have sheds in front yards. So this is a way that, just because this is the way it was done doesn't mean it's the best way. Or the right way, or the only way. So what I'm finding challenging is the disappointment that these people have because they're finding out for the first time when they apply for the permit. Okay? And so no realtor's gonna say, hey, and by the way, your yard is incredibly limited to what you could do compared to your neighbor. So in looking at, with the fencing requirement, the zoning administrator can reduce that requirement by 30%. In most cases, it's about 11.5 feet. So that gives them some cover, but it still doesn't give, the corner lot the privacy that a 6-foot fence gives the neighbor, for instance. So the requirement to have sending it out and writing to all the contiguous neighbors, it's $8 to send out certified mail. It takes a while to do. And if one neighbor does not agree to the waiver, they can just shoot it down. Well, it may surprise some of you that some neighbors don't get along with other neighbors. So all they have to do is say in writing they don't want that to happen, then it can't happen. Then 4-foot fence is the only opportunity. And for the sheds, we're thinking about looking at this right now. Well, we are looking at this right now. What can we do there? Because again, you cannot put a shed in any front yard. So they're having to go 35 feet into their backyard to be able to put their shed.
I'll start with, we really don't want a shed in our front yard.
No, you don't. But when you look at the side of the house, the 4 windows or something, it doesn't, I'm just saying, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know.
The second front yard is not considered a front yard by many people. Because if you had your house sitting there in the front, and so you come out your back door and the road's to your left, maybe you want to have a shed where you can come up, off your side, your lot right into your shed there. And it doesn't really, to me, I'm not sure why that ordinance was put there to begin with, but it probably was because of like when you pull up to the stop sign, so you don't have a 6-foot fence and you can see.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
have better visibility.
Right.
So to me, if you were in the second front yard behind the house, you're more than 35 foot from the intersection.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what anybody would care about that.
Well, I guess that would be covered more if it was in downtown or where the design standards would take effect. So that would create an issue based on what you're saying, because you don't want to see it from the road looking back, regardless if it's to the back, to the side, or behind the house. So you got a point if you're not in the design. Am I right on that, Jim?
Well, the design standards, I suppose, can override other sections of the code if to make the proposed, location of a shed, say, match what's around in the neighborhood, because obviously the historic district was built at a different time before the regulations that are in place now, like in the R10,000 district and so on. So they can override setbacks and such in order to maintain the rhythm of the neighborhood as far as placement of outbuildings or setbacks, things like that. I think that the primary intent of this equivalent front yard is really for the house itself. I think that's so that when you're driving down the street, all the houses are set back at the same distance, including the one at the corner. So if the one at the corner, which typically say in R10,000, for example, you have a 35-foot front yard setback and a 10-foot side yard setback. So when you get to the corner lot, if that house is facing the cross street, it would be potentially 10 feet from the curb instead of 35. So it would stick out, past all the other houses. I think that's probably the original intent of this, but it's not very clear as to what you can or can't do in that equivalent front yard. The way it's written, if we're supposed to treat it like a front yard, that means no 6-foot fences, no sheds. So that's kind of why we're looking for some, I guess, to be able to provide some relief to the homeowners on those corner lots. And that could be specific to accessory structures like a fence or a shed. If we could reduce the equivalent front yard for a fence or like a 6-foot high fence or a shed, say by 50%, and that would let them automatically go in R10,000 to 17.5 feet from the property line. Maybe if they wanted to go even closer than that, then we would have to send letters around to everybody and get the neighbors okay on it. But giving them a little bit of relief without having to go through that process. And then if they want to go even farther, maybe, to go and send certified letters around that Darryl would have to do. But as far as sheds go, sheds are supposed to be at least 10 feet from any street or alley, so they really can't go any closer anyhow. Maybe that's a good distance for as close as you could get to the curb for a 6-foot tall fence too. So just kind of some ideas, and maybe, if Darryl wants to play tour guide or something, or give you some properties to drive by, maybe that'll help.
There's a lot of properties with fences, and they all are a little bit different.
Yeah, and this isn't across the board. There is no equivalent front yard requirement in the downtown business district. There is none in R6000. In R7500, there's a typo that, if you look at that, it's very ambiguous. So really, it's R10 and bigger lots that really get hit by this.
For us, as we ponder this, we're purely focused on the yard aspect, not so much the possibility of a home kind of sticking out from the others, so that automatically that would change what the yardage would be.
I would not recommend adjusting the house setback. I think that's, I think we'd just be
Made a
looking at
mistake on
accessory
West
uses.
Palmer Street, where we allowed that one house to be set back from the rest of them. So that would change,
Yeah.
that
And
would
those-
change this
yeah.
all around as far as if they wanted to put a fence up. Because that house is back more than 30, I forget how far back it is.
There's a couple on West Baltimore Street that are, one is 35 feet back, and one is 60 feet back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the zoning administrators at the time didn't. There's also, okay, we didn't print out this part, but there's also language in the code that where there's an undeveloped lot between two developed lots, you're supposed to kind of split the setback between the two so that you don't have a house that's like out of place compared to all the other ones. But apparently that was overlooked when those two houses were permitted.
And what Jim was just talking about will probably come into play with the old Dubs property at 430 East Palmer Street. Because one of the scenarios would be that they build a semi-attached building up closer to 140. So we're going to have to use, the setback for
in that front lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So that'd be interesting.
So aside from the possibility of a tour, like the recommendations that y'all have made, or not so much recommendations, but the thoughts that you have about relief, I mean, that seems like very good ideas. So like what's a timeline for trying to say, okay, this is where we're gonna go?
So what we could do is, you know, if we want to say, let's throw that out and start the process rolling, the mayor and council would introduce an ordinance to update the code for those changes. It will come back to you for comment, so you get a chance to, you know, say yay or nay, or say, no, we think it should be this or that. Then there will be a public hearing, so the public has a chance to comment on it. And then it'll go ultimately for the mayor and council to vote. So, you know, 2-month process at a very minimum once it's introduced.
So is there a push on a timeline that we need to be looking at? Because in a few months, we're going to be going into winter.
Yeah.
So-
And right, fences slow down when the ground freezes, so.
Right. So what do we want to do at this point?
For me, one of the things that would help a lot is if I had a sketch of what the current requirements are, because I'm a little bit confused on that. So that would help me a lot to get started with, to know, you know, where we are. And then I'm in favor of having a road trip, you know, so that's, I think, I walked through the development, and as Jim said, I saw 6 or 7 different options
Yeah.
that I could choose from. And some were right on the sidewalk, and some were back, and some were 6 foot, some were 4 foot. So it would be good to kind of have that discussion and look at what we're talking about.
Okay. I'll put something together and contact you all.
Okay, give us a couple dates and.
Is it too bold to say that by mid-November, we will have had kind of our educational tour so that we could be informed and get some movement going? Because I feel like it's just always on the agenda, but what are we really doing? Like, let's make some progress.
I'm good with setting a date.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that with Thanksgiving holiday, like, would we be the last Monday of the month? Like, would it be like around the 30th? Is there even a date around there?
So our next meeting is October 31st.
That depends, that's Halloween too. And typically that doesn't affect us.
I would not mind giving out candy or hanging with my children.
That would be kind of cool.
Bring them here for trick or treat.
Bah
But anyway,
humbug.
okay, we'll talk about that later. But the 28th would have been the next one then, right?
Right.
If
so
you're
we
talking
could-
about so we need to have a trip planned sometime within the next 30 days, give or take,
Before Friday,
so we can have time to put our thoughts together for the November 28th meeting.
yeah, maybe before Friday the 18th or Saturday the 19th of November.
Yeah. So put something together and see how it works out. And
Yeah, I'll call you all, contact you all by the end of the week.
okay,
I'm gonna have 4 places lined up that we can go out and check, that we can go out and look.
You, sir.
can we do this together?
No. We're going,
People at a time,
sorry?
2 at a time,
Yeah, 2 people at a time.
or we
Because of
can,
the Open Meetings Act?
or we can
quorum.
advertise it as a meeting, and, you know, the public would have to be able to, you know, meet you out on the sidewalk at each location.
Yep.
But we could do it that way.
Yeah, we'll do it 2 at a time.
Two at a time.
A very Noah's Ark. Planning Commission, Noah.
2 by 2.
So, and my goal would be, so we're not traipsing these people's property over repeated days.
Yeah.
We're trying to line up that, I'll meet with you 2 at 1, you 2 at 1:30, and Bill at 10 o'clock at night. He likes to do this late night stuff.
Okay,
All right, so I'll be in contact. I'll send you an email this week.
good. All right. From the fences now. Let's go to the restricted general business district regulation.
And this goes back to those few properties on the east side, right? That were like, it was a house, it could be a house
I have
again.
two,
If it was never a
Fairground
house, it
Avenue.
can never be a house.
Daryl or Jimmy, you want to start us out on something on that? And then we can try to move forward with it.
The intent of that district was to allow a limited number of commercial uses there that would have a low impact on the nearby residential area where the historic district starts also. So something that while if there's a property that has a house on it, it can always be used for a house, even though it's, not listed as a permitted use. There is a property there that apparently is having some trouble being sold as a commercial property. But the lot size and everything, maybe the best and highest use for it would be to have a house there, a single-family house. So I guess this was done in 1999, and I think the expectation was that there was going to be this demand to convert all these houses to businesses. I don't think that we've seen that come to light. In 23 years, there's been one property that has switched over, that being the insurance office on the corner. So maybe we should have allowed houses to still be there. It probably doesn't hurt anything. I mean, there's still a number of homes in that strip. So that would give, somebody selling a property, for one thing, it would give the realtor or the prospective buyer comfort that a single-family home is a permitted use if they happen to be buying a single-family home in the district. Even though there's language in the code that talks about, once a home, always a home kind of a thing. That might provide some clarity that a house is okay there, that, if you're gonna buy a house, the city's not gonna say, oh, you can only use it for X number of years as a house or something. So that's one option. And I know Mr. Miller, last time we talked about this, suggested that maybe we list some special exception uses that the Board of Appeals could hear. So, maybe there are different types of service businesses or retail. I think if you start getting into larger square footage than what's specified in the limitation, you're probably looking at a tear down and replace scenario. I think the limitations that were put in there were probably with an eye towards trying to avoid that. But again, this was done 20-some years ago. The world changes, so, maybe if those properties are that desirable for some commercial use, I don't know, these are the things we need to be talking about, so.
So for this item, it seems like the flexibility to revert or to have a prior business possibly sold as a single family, that would open it up. That would increase the flexibility that seems to be desirable based upon the past 23 years. And then entertain some special exceptions. So those two items would seem to make the restricted general business district more workable. That's what I feel like I've heard the past couple of meetings, whether it be the city meetings or these meetings.
And I think we're really in the same situation that mayor and council and the planning commission were in 23 years ago. There's a property, it's been on the market, it's not selling, and there's, looking to the city for some relief or, to allow some alternative uses.
Well, who says that
And
if I owned a house there or a lot, that I would want to put a home, a resident there in that particular spot?
Right,
Considering
nobody's saying that you would have to, but
No, so
you
why-
might want to.
So why wouldn't we want to make that just plain general business, so it's the same consistency on both sides of the street from the corner of Fairground Avenue in?
Right, Well, if you think that's the best place in town for the next Sheetz or the next
I don't know
Burger
if that
King,
is, I'm just
then,
saying.
right.
It would be
Then that's the
consistent with what we
district
have.
to put there. Right. So,
And yes or no, would I want another sheet store there or something like that?
Right.
With heavy traffic? No,
right. So but that would be general business.
that would be general business.
Right. And that's what was, right, I think 20-some years ago, that was not looked upon favorably because it was a residential neighborhood with the exception of, one building in the middle that was a store for, years and years and years. And again, somebody couldn't sell a house as a house, but they could sell it as an office. So we changed our code to let them put an office there along with this limited type of use. Now we've had, every year or two, there's a house on the market on the main drag in a residential district, and people call, can I put this there? Can I put that there? And the answer is usually no, because it's a residential district, it's a house. And in this case, for whatever reason, the city created this new district in response to that pressure.
For this very small, specific portion of town that's deemed restricted general business, I'm in favor of relaxing the language so that there are more options. It's very specific to these few parcels that are on that end of town. So I don't believe it would be a slippery slope to say now that entire stretch of east that's residential would now no longer be purely residential. Like it seems like it's a niche on that end of town. So I personally am in favor of loosening the language so that we can.
So how would we do that other than making a list of items or vendors that can go in there and still require going through a Board of Appeals?
You could add
It's
something
hard to
like
list.
some districts, there's,
possibilities.
right, some districts have other similar uses as one of the bullet points. And the language in the under permitted uses could be tweaked a little bit. In some other districts, the language is a little bit softer, that gives a little bit more flexibility. So and I don't have the code in front of me right now, but in the general provisions of the code, it talks about where there's a list of things that they're to be done, that they're, as an example, but not supposed to be,
An extensive or
exhaustive.
comprehensive, yes.
And the language here, I think it's where it says as follows is different than what's in other districts. And maybe that could be changed.
Video rental stores, we know there's a big market for that. Is video rental stores, so obviously we can't list everything. So, I mean, there are ways to have language like what
We got
Mr.
18,
Weebrick said.
there's 18 items listed.
My point is several of them are archaic, so it's never the intent to say, pick from this menu.
Well, that's what I was trying to get away from, so we could have some type of means or an avenue to go through that we didn't have to spell out each individual.
And he just gave an option to affirm that it would not be an exhaustive list. So it could be softer language, so there'd be flexibility.
Yeah, because it's kind of like under general business, a drive-in restaurant or a movie theater. I don't think we want that in the general business area either. No. But that's listed in the general business area.
For this area that we're discussing, I would not be in favor of saying general business. I would like to keep the wording of restricted and then soften the language to increase the flexibility, as Mr. Weeprecht has shared, is possible.
Okay, and I'd go along with that. So what's your means or avenue of seeing that that would happen? Darrell or Jim?
Well, That's up to you guys.
Pardon me?
That's up to you all. So,
So we could make a recommendation to wording under permitted uses, right?
Well, then you're listing something if you do it under permitted uses.
No, you just
So-
say this, types of business similar to, and then you put your examples there.
So in the downtown business district, for example, it breaks things out in broad category and then gives a bunch of things as examples of that. So it's got like home furnishings, and then it talks about furniture, accessories, kitchen stores, bed, bath, and linen, and so on. But then the last thing is other similar uses. And then it goes on to special interest and lists a bunch and then says other similar businesses. So we could add something like that rather than trying to, name everything it might be, so that you're giving an example of things to sort of set the character of the type of business that would be appropriate there. But then add, that other similar business, so it could be something that, none of us are thinking of, but that has the same level of impact to the neighborhood, as the other things that are already mentioned there.
So for tonight to get the ball rolling, are you looking for a recommendation from us to draft similar language as that into this portion? Or do you need something more bold like a motion to draft?
It doesn't have to be anything formal. If we're comfortable just adding that kind of language, that's pretty straightforward. If we want to add houses as a permitted use, as we would probably, to make kind of flow like the other districts, we would probably shift the commercial uses down to number 2, and number 1 would be, residential, single-family, detached dwelling, or something like that. And again, maybe that's not the best use, but at least it would be an option. So and infill lots, residential infill lots have been moving recently. We have just a handful of lots around the city that, have sat for years and years, and we're finally, like the one that, well, it didn't come before you, it came before the Board of Appeals on Ridge Avenue. There was a Board of Appeals case a while back where a builder wanted to put a semi-detached house there as a special exception. They were denied that special exception because it was, I guess, out of character with everything else in the neighborhood. But a single-family house was permitted as a result.
That happened 6 months ago, roughly.
Yeah, and we've seen the lots that we used to be on Courier Drive that were vacant for years, had been built on. And it sounds like even for those who have been on the commission for a while, might recall the Flying Colors of Success lot close to Windy Hills. Sounds like that one may be settling to just put a home on it. So we're starting to see some movement on residential lots. So maybe that's an option. I don't know.
For restricted general business, I'm in favor of adding residential and incorporating similar language from the other sections. What do the rest of you all think?
You were saying make it residential or add that?
Add that as an option, like add that to the list to make it flexible, and then incorporate the wording of
Yeah,
others.
so I'm not opposed to that at all. I'm not sure I would want to live there, but I mean, a residential, lot in there would not, it's not like you're going to get a lot more traffic because of the type of business, I
No.
think, so
No.
I don't see why it would hurt anything. So,
Not at all.
I mean, what are you talking?
Yes.
So you want to put some type of recommendation?
Well, if there's consensus to move forward with
Then we're
that,
good.
we can draft something. Again, same pattern, it would get introduced, come back to you to review and comment on, and then go to public hearing with the mayor and council.
So in general, you're going to you're going to add the family home, you're going to put that up at the top, and you're going
Right,
to
shift everything else down.
take out the video rental stores maybe.
Well, I don't think we're going to take anything out of here because there's other items too.
Well, I think you could probably take I out.
You don't think we'll ever go back to that?
I think it's
I
coming.
don't think Blockbuster's coming back, sorry. Let's pour some for Blockbuster and Errol's.
But, yeah,
All right.
I'm
So-
good with that.
Lee's okay, Dan okay? Good. You're okay, I'm okay. Bill, you okay? All right. So,
Other businesses to each of the categories that follow that.
okay, at this point, I'm going to ask if there's any comments from the floor.
I just want to be clear.
Wait till you come up here, please.
Appreciate your enthusiasm, though.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear that, so,
Your
you know,
3
you're-
minutes starts when you come up here. Not back here.
tick, 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 tick. Now, I just want to be clear that, so what we're talking about are those lots in that restricted district now just being the only, really, from what I understand, the way we seem to be talking about this is that you're just going to be adding residential as an allowed use. Isn't that kind of what it boils down to?
The word's similar, so there might be some flexibility if somebody had a proposal to then.
But the whole idea was to keep those to restricted to smaller businesses. You didn't want sheets there.
Correct.
So, you know, so it stays in that, all that character stays the same, and then also allows for residential use if that turns out to be the highest best use. So,
Yep.
cool, that's all I needed to know. I wanted to make sure I was under, this has been a very circuitous discussion. I just wanted to make sure that was all boiling down to the same spot. Thank you.
Elias Magellan, we try our best.
We good with that now, Jim?
Buggy whips to replace video stores. Maybe.
Yes, please.
That could be, yes.
Hi, I'm Wayne Wachter. I'm basically the owner of the property out there at 454 East Baltimore Street. And because of the restrictions on the other side of the road there, as you know, it's non-restricted. I have lost a sale 3 different times of that property because it's restricted business. And it's cost me a lot of money. And I'm not only representing myself, I'm representing the estate of Kenneth A. Bear, which my wife was one of them, who recently passed away, of course. But why can't you all think about having, maybe with some restrictions, but in other words, there's 2 lots there, the one where the building's on and the one there next to it. Well, a gentleman wanted to build a hardware store there. He wanted a 10,000 square foot building. But you all say, no, you can have 2 5,000 square foot buildings. That doesn't even make sense for the same owner. And of course, he walked away. He's very upset. So, and I'm a little upset too. Yes, I realize the town needs to be able to do the things that they need to. It's best for the town. But we got to think about the residents too. And so I'm going to speak my word now, and I got lawyers working on it right now. If you need them to come in and talk to y'all, be more than happy to bring them. And I just need you to think about this, that's all.
Okay.
And to be fair, and I think you all will. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Walker.
All right. Any more comments or issues before we move on? All right. Let's move on to the urban mix.
So I personally am ill-prepared to talk urban mix because I could not access the shared doc successfully, trying through 2 different platforms. So I don't know if everyone else was successful. If that's the case, then I would say let's proceed. If not successful, I would like to table that and talk about the other items that were hard copies in our pack that we could possibly be more productive.
Okay. Bill? I'm okay with tabling that.
I was able to access it. Yeah.
Do we need to put that in a form of a motion if, to table something? We do, don't we?
If
I think we do.
Yes, so actually, table is not the right word when you're going to pick something up again the next month. Table is typically like, we're done with it.
So,
So, but a lot of people say, let's table it until next
Right.
month, but that's technically not,
I
not
move
right.
we delay discussion until our next session.
Right.
Shelf.
so Jay, where's Jay when I need him?
Right.
The appropriate term?
So Dan could access it. How about the rest of you?
Pardon me?
So we had talked about Google Docs last month. We don't have a license for that, so we use the OneNote. So Dan was able to access it. Maybe something is going on with the document itself. So we had some issues with it at first as well.
So were y'all able to access it? Were you able to open up the electronic share that Daryl sent to you?
No. No.
So are you comfortable then delaying it until
Delaying
next
it,
month?
yeah.
Yes.
So why don't, as chair, why don't I just say, we'll delay, we'll carry it on to the next month's meeting. Agreeable?
Agreed.
Done. Okay.
And may I request, if, like, maybe just, could you send out the section as an attachment, like in an email, and we could read it or print it at leisure?
Well, let me get up with IT tomorrow. This way, it's just for the members of the planning commission with no intention at all of it being all of you at one time, just at your convenience. But like to protect it because it's yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we'll talk about it next month.
Okay.
Okay. Large-scale solar projects. What did you mean by large scale? Are we talking about something like the county? We're not talking about something typically goes on somebody's roof or in their backyard, right? We're talking about somebody who wants to take an R10,000 or R75 and fill the whole lot with solar panels or what?
Right, typically something beyond rooftop solar.
I got that here too somewhere. You almost got it? Okay.
So there is right, I think Darrell included in your packets again, a copy of the kind of an excerpt from the Carroll County Code on solar. And that's really in there just for, hopefully to generate some ideas and some discussion as to, how the county approaches it. There's things in here like, if you have panels on a roof and in a yard that they can't exceed the total that would have been allowed on the roof, things like that keep it from, filling an entire, say R10,000 size yard. Do we want to, I'm trying to figure out the best way to address this in the code. I'd like to address it under the supplementary district regulations, where it'll be kind of its own section on solar generating facilities, rather than going in and adding like a solar section to each district. But if we can come up with kind of a general approach, do we want it to be pretty limited in the residential zones and then broader in the, the commercial or industrial districts? Do we want it to be more limited to, say, industrial rather than general business? Where, is there a district where they are a better fit than another for like a larger scale, like a solar farm? Do we want to make it easy for somebody to put it, out on Antrim Boulevard, where it's general business? Or would it be better to be, maybe not next to, commercial properties, but maybe more industrial?
So what other cities or towns already have something already on the books besides the county? I know the county worked on this quite a bit.
Yeah. So I have some other municipal examples, and actually have some model ordinances from other states that we could share also, if you'd like to see some more information about how some other places are doing it. There aren't a lot of municipalities in Maryland that have their own regs on it, but I can forward that to you guys if you would like to see a town set of regulations.
Didn't Union Bridge just have something not too long ago about solar panels?
Yeah, yeah.
Put a farm out there.
Near Lehigh,
Was it Lehigh?
right on the other side.
Okay,
Big one. Right on
but not in a residential area or,
No, no, that was an undeveloped area.
the belt, part of that farm.
okay.
Might there be in any research, have you come across possibly, I mean, well, I guess we'd have to customize it for Taneytown. So in general, in our general business area, possibly like an average amount of energy used. And then let's say a general business wanted to be maybe not 100% self-sufficient, but be able to contribute to their own electrical bill, like how much surface area of solar panels, like just a ballpark, because to answer one of your questions, I mean, I personally feel like if we were to ponder large-scale projects, I would see it in the industrial area, not the general business. But I am curious about how much surface area would be required for an average general business in case they wanted to go the green way or become more green in their building.
Right. And that's, yeah, so I think we would draw a line between a solar facility that's constructed to provide energy for on-site use. So like a grocery store, they may, if they want to, utilize solar energy, they could put panels up on, assuming the structure supports it. They could put panels up on the roof.
Right.
They could potentially put a canopy over part of their parking lot, and have the panels raised, a certain height. But generally, you would limit that solar generation capability to the power demands of that site. That would be one way to kind of keep it from taking over an undeveloped general business property. So it wouldn't be that you can only have X number of panels, but it would be you can only generate the energy that's going to be consumed on the site. And then anything beyond that would be, where the solar generation would be the primary use of the property. Maybe we limit that to the industrial area.
I like
So, so it gives, a larger site could have more panels, because they're also probably going to use more energy.
All relative to the business.
And I guess we would still need to figure out setbacks and things like that wouldn't be too onerous.
So what ordinance covers the solar panels on the house and the developments now? Is there do we have anything that says X amount of footage? Or how?
So, right, so our code is silent on it. We treat it as just an accessory use to the, to the dwelling. And I'm sure everyone's, arrangement may be different, but I think it's pretty typical that, that the systems are generally sized to provide for the needs of that particular property over the course of a year. So you may generate excess energy during the summer months when, you've got a lot more sunshine. But then considering that you don't generate much in the winter months, that it kind of nets out. So you're generally still consuming more energy than you're producing. And generally when, if there's a power purchase agreement where the solar company foots the bill and gets a tax credit to put the panels on somebody's roof, and then you buy back the power that they generate for X number of years, those agreements typically are not structured so that you really benefit by selling the energy back to the grid, because you're getting less for it than it's really worth with those types of agreements. So I think that's more market-driven right now than anything. And then, of course, there's also building code limitations that you can't have a panel where it's going to obstruct emergency egress from a window, like you can't have it on a porch roof if that's how you would get out of a bedroom in a fire. You know, you can't have it within so many inches of a vent or a pipe on the roof or a chimney, things like that. So the building code kind of limits it currently. But as far as city code goes, if it's just roof mounted and it's, you know, basically following the slope of the roof and not like elevated beyond that more than a few inches, we just look at it as an accessory use and let the county handle it from the permits and inspections aspect to make sure it meets all the building code regulations.
So as of now, would the county stymie any efforts for a private residence to put solar panels 8 feet off the ground in the backyard?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so silent
and-
truly there too, so, okay. I mean, this is a big idea and it's hard with a large
Yeah.
body to say where we go from here, but I would love to see maybe some draft language about limiting residential to rooftops, you know, a few inches off the roof, and not have any ability to build in any side, back, whatever yard. And then for general business, self-sustaining, but typically, you know, whatever the need would be. But I definitely would want to have setbacks so that the entire surrounding area of a general business would become solar panels. And then I would like to limit any ambitious projects to industrial. I mean, I know that's not exhaustive, but if we can get maybe
But
the ball rolling.
it's a
in that.
framework, so
Right.
it can get us started.
How do y'all feel about that?
Yeah, same way, like if Vapco or Flowserve wanted to put something on their roof, or could they handle it now? Or if they have additional
Land?
land that they wanted to put it, as long as it was buffered or something, and
Well, as Jim said, the other new thing that I've seen is over parking spaces. That's a new thing. I've seen that more and more. So they're getting more creative of where they can put them.
so I think we need more before we can,
Yeah.
So are we comfortable with, there was a request to see what other municipalities may have, but also get the ball rolling with kind of those three
Input.
categories?
Okay.
Residential, general business, and industrial?
Yep.
We will try to put pen to paper, but also send out some municipal examples
maybe
that we
see what the
can.
county has.
Well, it looks like this, like what we have right here is the county.
Is that it?
Yeah,
This is the county, what we have.
yeah, what was in our packet.
It's not the entire,
Not
it's,
exhaustive, no.
it's chunks of it.
I mean, it's a pretty good feel
Yeah.
for what is currently in place. And so once again, I feel like it's been on the agenda for a while, so let's move forward.
Okay. Moving on to new business.
Okay, discussion on the Taneytown Community Comprehensive Plan. It's, this is the beginning. There's a lot to it. It will take this body quite a while to get through this. But we're just doing, you know, a couple chapters at a time. Jim and I met with the state back a few months and talked about there are certain aspects of a comprehensive plan that are done by pretty much full-time professionals. And that will help, those chapters we're seek out that help and but bring it back to this body here. So right now, we're looking at chapters 1 and 2. It's an introduction. Jim's got some changes off to the you can see it's color coded, the changes. And, you know, we'd like to knock down these 2 chapters, you know, with some type of agreement. And then we're, you know, introduce more.
Did everyone have a chance to go over the,
Yes.
I did not.
you did not either? I did, but I'll have to go, if we're going to wait till next month, I'll have to go over them again.
I have a few questions that, I mean, honestly, selfishly, it's more education for me if y'all as the experts could help me to understand, especially as things such as annexations have come up. So on page 5, the 1997 Smart Growth Initiative talked about the priority funding area. I feel like at some point that was, and I could be totally wrong, so that's why I'm asking for y'all to help me out. Any annexations that come, well, so there are two on my mind. There was the concept plan that was brought last month, about 50 units next to the new wedding venue. That would seem to be a higher density. I don't know if it's 3.5 dwelling units per acre, but because would be a new proposal, that's not it wouldn't be considered priority funding area, would it? Or is it by default because Taneytown was granted that in 97?
I don't think that property was annexed at that point.
So it has to have already been annexed for it to fall under that.
Right.
So anything new would not be, there'd be no possibility of state support for infrastructure or anything like that. Or maintenance, I
Stuff that
guess.
was annexed after the 1997 Act, has to go through basically a test to make sure that it meets the smart growth criteria. And if it does, then it can be considered priority funding area. So we can request our priority funding area to be modified once we have a development proposal, for a property or an approved. I think it actually has to be an approved plan for the property. And if it meets the criteria, our priority funding area can be modified. If we had like an R20 subdivision that wasn't going to cluster or something like that, that would not meet the smart growth density, and that area probably would never be a priority funding area.
So before I jump all over the place, would the best way would be to go page by page and basically say, well, we said we're going to talk about it next time.
Yeah, because there's 3.
I got you. So I'm going to go ahead and move with questions if that's okay. And then we can revisit it next time around. Let's see.
Just kind of some general information while Lee's looking through. So for many, many years, planning was addressed in Article 66B of the Code of Maryland, and that was repealed and replaced with a land use article since the last time we did our comprehensive plan. So that's what a lot of that red is about, and for a lot of that, we just cut and pasted off of the State Planning Department's page.
And actually, the question I asked seemed to have hit a lot of the notations that I already had made, so I think I might be good. Oh, question, page 13, the highlighted yellow, housing and community design. Was that an addition? Provide for a wide range of housing, or was it just highlighted, and if so, for what reason?
Okay. I highlighted that because when we talked about the goals and objectives several months ago, that was something that the commission had concern about, and there is a request to about the wide range of density, I think it was commented about that we've had more high density development recently, and maybe we didn't need to specifically talk about the variety of density.
Got it.
I highlighted that because that's going to be a component of the housing element, so that's kind of a non-negotiable from the State Planning Department. So we're supposed to offer a variety of housing types, for affordability and density, and that's part of the housing element requirements. So I highlighted it because it goes a little contrary to some of the comments that were made when we looked at the goals a few months ago.
Thank you.
That was as much for to remind me to bring that up as anything.
The road works, the pipes, inflow, infiltration, all the stuff that Taneytown's been working on last year, this current year, and next year. Is there currently a prediction based on expected work in which, and I could be reversing these numbers, I want to say that possibly runoff sewer capacity was at 88%, and then water draw was 83%, and the county was looking for 80% before more domiciles were brought online. So I'm wondering, is there a projection as to when maybe that could be down below 80 or even 75 for both of those?
We hope that by the end of the fiscal year, when we have most of these sewer rehabilitation projects in the ground, that we'll see those real-world numbers dropping to put us below the 80%. We certainly hope by the end of the fiscal year, but we're going to need to capture data for some time and provide that to the county and the state to amend our water and sewer master plan. And the state may want a longer data collection period, rather than just say, you look, hey, Greg, we've seen our numbers drop by 30%.
What's the length? What are they looking for?
6 months or a year?
Yeah, is it
So
curious?
from our last meeting with the county folks, they're looking for 2 years' worth of data typically.
Wow.
Now, we've seen an amendment go through based on engineering estimates, but that was for a relatively small project that, was not like a 300-house
Right.
project.
Right.
So, for those bigger projects, it may end up taking a longer time.
So you're talking 3 years then?
For in-house, and when I say in-house, I mean Taneytown, for the sake of the planning commission pondering,
Right.
Any potential growth or even
Yeah,
the
I
town
mean, we're
council.
gonna be-
End of 2024, might we have some
Oh,
squishy?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just one.
we monitor flows at the pumping stations as well as the
Lovely.
treatment plant. We report regularly on it, so we've already seen, for the small section of the Meadowbrook Sewer Interceptor that's been done between the Orion Avenue Bridge. And, we saw a pretty good reduction just with the little bit that was done relative to that bridge project. Now we've replaced part of the downstream segment near the Crane Masters property, and the last phase is going to be lining what's left. But we've already seen substantial decreases in flows at the York Street pumping station related to the work that we've done this spring, this past spring.
Wonderful.
So we'll be tracking that regularly, and we can report that as well.
Thank you. And actually, that's all I had. Thank you.
To conclude new business for this term.
Sorry, Jim. So when we review this at the next meeting, we're just going to go down paragraph by paragraph and everybody has comments?
So what I've done with this one is, I just put it in a Word format and then use track changes. So any changes that I made either have a notation near it, or it's going to be, struck through in red or underlined in red for the new text. So otherwise, it's the language that we had approved back with the 2010 plan. So, I mean, we certainly can rewrite things, but at least to get the ball rolling, I just went through and tried to make updates as I thought were appropriate based on, some of the legislation that's passed since the last plan, like the change of Article 66B to the land use article. And I may have some additional language regarding the housing element. There's a new models and guidelines for the housing element that the state has published. I have not had a chance to look through that yet, so we may have a little bit more to put in regarding the plan introduction section. We might need to say a little bit more about the housing element going forward. But the first 2 chapters are really talking about planning legislation and requirements and things like that for the plan. And then again, those goals that we talked about a few months ago.
So for the commission, when we do this work, possibly we're focusing on, I would think, the red parts, the parts that have been updated by other documents, and then possibly if something not highlighted or not in red, not a track change speaks to you, I would recommend, say, page 7, paragraph 2, line 3, like be ready to roll with whatever strikes you so that we can get through it.
Just, look it over with a highlighter in your hand. And stuff that, that doesn't seem right. And again, there may be text in here that we don't feel like we need anymore. And that can be fine also. I mean, this is when we get to this point, this is going to be reviewed by a number of state agencies as well as, of course, county planning and the public as well. So, there are going to be a lot of eyes on this before it gets approved. So, cool. All right. Once we get these two chapters, the third chapter is going to be a little bit, a lot more work on the staff end because that's going to be looking at the implementation chapter from the 2010 plan and all the goals or recommendations that were in that implementation chapter and trying to kind of hold a measuring stick to them. Did we accomplish this? Didn't we accomplish it? And if we didn't, why? So there were a lot of recommendations to go through. So we may not have that for a couple more months, but we'll see how. All depends on how much time we can spend on it over the next month.
Okay, and thinking about our next meeting, I would like to put forth the suggestion that instead of Monday, the 31st, which is actually 5 weeks away on Halloween, to possibly do Monday, the 24th, or if that doesn't work for y'all, maybe Wednesday, the 26th.
26 won't work.
We should keep it on Monday.
26th, in that one, don't we have training in?
Right, the 25th and 26th is the.
Planning Commission, so
Planning Commission in
24th?
February, so
How's that look?
So 24th work for everyone. There again, we just should keep it on a Monday. Good, 24th, good?
24th good.
24th, good?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, October 24th. And since you brought it up, the 25th and 26th is at Frederick, the planning conference. Any comments on that? I'm going, who's going?
I can't.
I'm planning on.
Bill
You
and
going?
Brad are not going. And Lee, you're gonna let me know?
I might be. I gotta check with work.
Okay.
Okay, and Dan, you're going, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have to carpool in two people, aren't they?
Depends on what you talk about. All right.
So if you guys do want to carpool and you can refrain from talking about planning commission business, you're allowed to do that. But if there are 3 of you in the car, okay. So, right, so maybe, right,
That's why we're going.
right.
We just not.
But you won't be talking about city business.
City, right. Phil, you have anything?
No.
Brad? Dan? Lee? Anybody from this ordinance? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thanks again, folks.
Hey, Darrell.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you, Lee.
See ya. So all we gotta do is. Okay, who helped me with this thing?
What's that? Oh,
There we go. Well, that's not what I'm, okay,
hit that, yeah, there you go.
I'm good.
You're good.
We're good. Okay.
You're back up and running.
Three inboxes. What the heck does Jim mean? You know, we got that meeting Wednesday night.
Yep. Hey, Jim, can you share your Word document by any chance?
Sure.
Darrell, you want those
No, I meant electronically.
envelopes back?
Yeah.
If you want to, sure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I use them.
I mean, it's like, yeah.
I got a whole box.
Oh.